You're kind of looking kind of tan there, bud. What's
Got a
going
little
down?
tan, got a little tan. Just got back from Jamaica. So it was good. It was a good time down there. Got a
You
lot of
bring
time on the beach.
you bring kiddos, or what do you do?
No, no, just my wife and I. Actually, it was funny. The kids were pretty pissed because we went to Jamaica where it was like 80 every day and sunny, and we sent the kids to upstate New York where it was like it had just snowed and it was like 40 degrees. They were not happy.
It's where they belong. You got to tell them it's earned, right? Earned. I'm
Yeah.
curious for everybody hanging with us. It is kind of what, like late spring break, early into summer. Anybody got good like summer plans? Doing anything exciting? Or, somebody the other day was telling me they were skiing, and I was like, could not relate that they were. I don't even know if
Yeah.
you get good powder this time of year. I don't know. Maybe somewhere in Utah or something. Definitely not here in
Yeah,
Florida.
probably. Up in
All
the
right.
mountains.
All right. Oh, we got some good stuff coming in here.
St. George Island. I don't know. Is that in the Caribbean? I don't know where that is.
Mm. Oh, we got some London going down. I have not been back. I lived, right outside of London for like 8 years, 9 years, and then in the middle of nowhere, England, and have not been back in like 10
Aruba.
years.
That sounds good. Cookeville, Tennessee.
Mm.
Can't say that I know where that is.
I mean, don't get me wrong. That sounds, I've done a couple like, Sevierville, Pigeon Forge, some just random excuse to drink,
Uh,
like
yeah.
moonshiner type, stuff. So I don't
Yeah.
mind a good Tennessee trip. All right, 70 miles east of Nashville. That's not bad. Well,
Yeah.
pumped obviously to see folks are getting out from behind the computer. I mean, this is one of those things that I love it, but I got to escape it. So, not a bad time. And obviously, I got to see Chris, like a lot of folks, I think by this time, if you tune into enough of these product labs, especially if you're watching these suckers live, we create the content every morning, right? We just don't have enough time during the day. And what's nice is it keeps us sharp. So, my favorite part about this is as we were kind of BSing with each other, Chris is like, look, we kind of got called out on one of our episodes recently that we gave all this roadmap update of where we're going to go and, kind of not just like 2024 into 2025, but what is some of the bigger things that are pulling us along? So today's episode, we're going to dive all into kind of one of those updates. It's on the big kind of new emerging market called security posture management. It really is like reskinned config management with a little bit of like zero trust. So just sharing today, we've got a lot of questions, even a couple polls, right? We try to keep things loose. If you've never joined us on Product Lab and especially watching it live, those of you that watch it like live on YouTube streaming or LinkedIn live and things like that, we won't see your questions, but those of you who are here like hanging with us on the actual webinar, we've got a ton of feedback we're looking for because to be very frank, some of it is spicy, some of it is helping us prioritize. And the number one thing that drives our roadmap is you all. So, Chris, if you're cool, got a new laptop today. We're going to see if screen share works and kind of dive into it. You cool with me cranking out just a couple like supporting slides?
Yeah, fuck it. Let's do it live.
All right, let's do it. And permissions allowed it to happen, right? I'm seeing it, and I don't see
Okay.
anybody trolling me yet in Slack. So, Chris, I'm looking at a handful of things we're doing today. I kept it simple, just a little refresh after we cover like what's released in the last month, so what's straight out of the lab, and then really diving into not only the endpoint side of security posture management, kind of getting feedback, giving an update, really needing some help. I also threw some of the research, and this one is much more like talk track, both what we're seeing out of ITDR. I think you even worked with our internal IT team. If anybody's curious how a fully remote workforce manages like a modern tech stack, we've got some insider scoop on Huntress. I'm sure that'll be good for a threat actor one day who's trying to wreck us. So that's some good fodder. And then we've got some innovation stuff that just doesn't fit in there, but we want to share with you, some of these are like literal R&D things in process, and some of these are more moonshots. So we're going to keep it kind of going. Are you
Yeah, and
good, Chris? Maybe.
don't forget, make sure you're active, participating, all that. We usually just scroll through chat at the end and try to find usually two people and throw them some swag. People who've been active and asking questions and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, super curious. Like, do you know what the swag's going to be today?
It's one of those nice like Huntress Yeti mugs, one of those big ones,
Oh, sweet. Thank you.
and a Huntress t-shirt. So like I've got like the small Yeti mug, but there's like a
Oh,
big one with a handle.
all right. So
So
your green screen says you don't have.
oh, that's a good point. Can you say no?
No, no, it's really,
Okay, there
really
we go.
green. So no
Man,
mugs allowed. Only
technology doesn't
your
work.
ugly mug is allowed. So that's oh man,
Just
I see.
imagine me holding this big Yeti mug with the Huntress logo on it. Okay, there you go.
Do you see Matt's holding out for our Huntress branded flamethrower? And we did get our hands on some of those, crazy, gosh, what was it, Boring Company
Boring
flamethrowers?
company, yeah.
So maybe we need to like crudely put a sticker over top of it. I could do a. That's it. We're gonna put this on the list of flamethrowers and watch what my legal department has to say about liability.
Yeah.
Keeping it moving, right? Straight out of the lab. Chris, you want to walk through? I know you obviously you're still leading SIM, but you're in the process of passing SIM from innovation lab over to the actual full product and threat research team. So you want to give anybody a heads up of what's going down?
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of the thing with the way that like the innovation lab works and a lot of the stuff that I do and folks on my team do, it's all about trying to figure out what's next, doing moonshots, figuring out new products, all that kind of stuff. And so it's really cool to see as those, products as we transition them over to having a full-on engineering team backing them and having this, fully built out roadmap and everything. And as you see them start to really take shape, and you can see here from the slides, we are just wrecking people with SIM, right? We are finding brute force attacks. We are finding, stuff coming in through VPNs. We're finding successful logins from malicious actors. Like it's all over the place. We're just finding all kinds of stuff. So it's really cool to just like see that finally take shape.
I think most folks, Chris, have come to learn like kind of overnight Chat GPT and all the generative AI has kind of squashed the Nigerian prince emails. They're all way too good. What I've came to learn is a lot of these wild IP addresses we get that you're like, is that somebody legit, 419er, country code trying to get into my account? And what a lot of folks don't realize is the IPv4 problem is still a real problem. And what I mean by that is some of these countries like have large spaces of ISP space that's not used. So oftentimes Afrinic, which is, the essentially body that governs the IP, distribution in Africa, resells some of this. And oftentimes you can get domain fronting and redirection, and they're a little bit unscrupulous. So what's
Yeah.
wild is even though they could be somebody that's maybe in a Western country, a lot of folks don't realize when they use these like resellers or redirectors or fronting services that you often get caught up by just showing up odd enough that, your stuff might have run really good trade craft, but you were on a resold IP address. And sometimes that's just good enough. So wanted
Yeah,
to share
right.
that with folks that this is some of the wild things that are coming up over here. I'm taking a look at it chat, Chris, and folks were talking about ITDR successes too. And I've asked them the question of like, hey, are you seeing VPN logins? And it looks like, yeah, I've
Yeah.
seen, mainly VPN logins. And it's so funny. I'm glad to see Sim though, being able to catch some of these nasty things.
Yep. 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 For sure.
All right, Chris, I advanced you one more. I saw you get
Yeah.
some syslog work.
Yeah, so there's we've run into a number of things like we set up the Huntress agent to be able to collect syslog stuff locally so you can point your firewalls at it and whatever and it will collect it. What we found is that some people already have something collecting on syslog on the standard port 514, and so they were trying to figure out how they could do two things as they transition over from maybe another SIM to the Huntress SIM. And so we added this just so that you could go in and you could specify whatever port you wanted the Huntress, uh, basically syslog collector to listen on. So you can put in any port in there, UDP, and it'll listen there, and you can point the stuff at it. So that way you can run two of these on the same machine.
All right, dude, I'm keeping it going, right? I know some of these are little, but
Yeah.
we've had a lot of feedback. And to be very frank, one of the things we're working to improve, and we've kind of had a previous episode about SOC support. A lot of people forget the SOC is available for like escalating things, though, even if you need to, they can call you back. What's exciting though is some folks have asked us for bi-directional communication with the SOC. And to be very frank, there's so much there to explore. This is not the bi-directional conversation, but what we're exploring is comments. There's a lot
Okay.
of people that we think the best comments probably should happen, like in your PSA and your ticketing systems. But we run into other folks who are like, look, I want to be able to, with my other team, to be able to put notes maybe I don't feel comfortable putting in my PSA, or maybe they're too detailed. And so one of the things that we added, I don't see this really applying to everybody, but you now have the ability that you can comment on some of your tickets. And it's meant really for your own internal collaboration. Notice we put a lovely
Yep.
disclaimer saying, our SOC isn't going to respond to these suckers, but it's essentially a place to do information sharing. It cost us zero to be able to add this.
Yeah.
So it was one of the easiest, like quick, low hanging fruits. And Chris, I think you had one more here of this was a good one too that came from our audience and kind of some of our people in beta on ITDR. Do you want to explain
Yeah.
how this came about?
Yeah, so when we built out ITDR, we really focused on like integrating with Microsoft 365. And so one of the things that we added early on there was the ability to lock out accounts. Like if we saw malicious activity, saw an attacker logging in, we could lock the account and terminate all the sessions through the Microsoft API. That meant that everybody was locked out, that the real user would then have to go kind of reset their password, get in again. What we found is that there are still a bunch of people who have hybrid models where they have, identities within Entra in the Microsoft cloud, but they've also still got Active Directory local, and in some cases there is syncing and other cases not. And so we would lock out the account on the Entra side, but it didn't help when there was that local account and when that local account was being synced and things like that. So we had to add in the ability for our agent and identify which machine was the primary domain controller locally so that we could then lock that user out so they couldn't log into anything within the network. So it was um, it was something that we hadn't initially planned for, but we learned just as we rolled it out and as people were trying it.
Hey, Chris, I read the product pitch for this one, but I didn't read like any of the implementation. Dan live asked a question saying, yo, how does this complement conditional access policies in Entra? I'm not 100% sure if he's asking about the local disabled policies or just some of the other like geo
Mm,
type questions. Do you happen
yeah.
to know? Have we had any reporting of conflicting? If not, we can grab somebody of the team. I just was curious if we could answer it for him live while
No,
we're
I
here.
haven't yet, and this doesn't integrate with conditional access, right? Because conditional access is just the ability to put filters and restrictions on who can log in to M365. I don't actually know how conditional access plays when you have a hybrid model with identity syncing. I'm not sure how that works, so we'll have to go ask the ITDR team and see if they've done some research here to figure out how it does work.
Yeah. And so for those of you that are watching this on record, Rich, the PM for ITDR, just chimed in. Automatic disablement of hybrid identities in I or via ITDR. He said it's coming soon. So
Yeah.
you ask, you shall receive. And this is the
Yeah.
benefit of having so many, people be able to, raise these up.
This
Chris, I
is
know
this
what
is the first step. So the first step is being able to disable them. Second step is then automating it.
Sweet, sweet. So, and yeah, we got other folks clarifying like, look, just because conditional access is to M365, remember conditional access is not an on-prem Active Directory feature. So, good call outs,
Yep.
everyone. Chris, I got to keep us going. We've got a lot of like
Yeah.
hot topic, and I know what happens is we always run out for innovation, even just
Yeah.
BSing. You want to talk? I mean, rogue apps. This is something that we keep seeing. We announced that over a couple months, we try to give people pulse updates. And what's beautiful is Matt Kiley. Many of you take his like malware classes online or anything along those lines. He's the principal security researcher for ITDR and wanted us to just kind of take a collective community like, yo, we're making a difference. We no joke have about 1,200 more of these reported signals of finding. And it turns out pretty damn accurate. Most of the time we're seeing these abused, and oftentimes they're kind of like lull bins, legit applications that are on the, endpoint by default. We're seeing a lot of these legit M365 accounts predominantly used for abuse. So still operating at, what is that, a minor tick up? But we're talking under 4% of rejections on this. And that's times, I think, Chris, paying identities is like what? Edging close to 2 million. I think unpaid is
Yeah.
over 5 million identities.
Yeah. I saw,
Um,
yeah, the other day, like if you include all of it, including like service principals, which are like installed applications and other things that are kind of non-user, non-build identities, we've got 6.5 million. So
so
we're pushing it.
not a bad, use of wrecking, weak threat actor tradecraft. With
Yep.
it said, really excited. And folks, if you've got questions and things like this, like, Ryan, I see the question you just asked live. Um, Obviously the team is going to get to it, but just a reminder, like feedback.huntress.com, Chris and I live on that sucker. The whole product team lives for your feedback. So don't hesitate to go in there. And sometimes somebody's already asked, just upvote the heck out of it because it helps give us an idea of like prioritization or at least magnitude. I want to fly through a little bit. Remember, today's episode is all about security posture management. And I want to remind everybody, like, we internally don't work on like the normal cyber defense matrix. If you remember, the cyber defense matrix across the top is the typical 5 like NIST pillars, right? Identify, protect, detect, respond, and the recover side. But for us, we kind of look at it as a little bit broader of a spectrum. Over on the left, really security posture management is the identification, the hardening, and the education, right? Like understanding that there could be a big problem, but what do you do? And maybe sometimes what do you not do? We've got some spicy questions related to that. And the thing I want to share is a lot of people understand that typically they use different pillars. This is our more modern version. This is quite literally how we build the roadmap. And if any of you haven't seen this before, Hunter's whole mission is like, how do we squash the people, right? How do we make it and we deliver you a product at the price of essentially, or sorry, world-class people at the price of an affordable SaaS product? And I think most know we don't try to go for like blackout bingo here. We go for where we can interrupt tradecraft the most. And I want to share with you all that just like kind of last year, we mentioned on the roadmap that there is these places that we're diving deep into. Endpoint and identity security posture management. We've been experimenting, we've been testing, we've been building hypothesis, and sometimes it's just about gathering like input and data. And we want to share with you what we're doing on here. And the whole goal, by the way, of a lot of this stuff is like, think about security posture management, right? It's all about like, gosh, just keeping up with all the different configuration settings. Every of us know like it's a nightmare. Drift is a nightmare. So it's not just like monitoring, it's actually keeping them back when things do drift. And sometimes they drift for a good reason. And sometimes it's just by accident. And obviously, I think any of us who've ever done long amounts of configuration management, we know that like a good baseline is dope, but like the amount of like research testing, it's like it just exhausts the amount of like IT time that we have there. And the solution, yeah, a lot of people say, hey, you know what? If we're doing this right, maybe we can make it easier for anybody, right? Whether they're most of our base is these folks that are kick-ass outsourced IT departments that bring way more than outsourced IT. They bring like real partnership and they complement. So when we have these in-house IT departments that are also running into similar problems, the thing we're hearing over and over is like, yo, Kyle, it is crap keeping this baseline together, maintaining it. And then obviously, if they do have really great people, that's like the easiest way to churn your staff. That's at least what we hear from our sales teams, our security engineers, our actual IT team itself, who's like, yo, I don't want to manage this security posture baseline. And we have to do this internal across our cloud apps, obviously all our laptops and the 10 million SaaS apps and identities that it seems like we constantly are adding. And the part I'll end with is obviously the security posture management is all about constraints. How do we not only make sure that we're saying, oh, look, there's always going to be more systems to manage than we actually have. We know that we're not going to have perfect coverage with what Huntress starts, but we're kind of also like realizing that not all systems provide an API to do security posture management in an automated form. So we're going to share with you what we've learned internally. Chris has met with some of these really big companies doing security posture management. I've chat recently with a pretty shady, lovely product leader at a notable identity company that was sharing with me that some of this drift, not on just people adding kind of the good old fashioned shadow IT on desktops, but just logging in or adding another SaaS app. And we need a lot of kind of very specific feedback. So I'll share with you, just like last month's episode, we are trying to shift a lot of things left. We do really, really good here, but good isn't good enough. So you're seeing in this conversation, it's about moving things that even sometimes get to detection. Can we do more against protection, right? Can we get these at the level where they don't even get to the expense of humans doing threat hunting? So, Chris, did you got anything to add? I mean, I know that was like the world's quickest refresher of what we're talking about for
Yeah.
security posture management, but I mean, are you good? I'll
Yeah,
read
no, I
chat
mean,
real quick.
I think that was a really good overview of like what is how do we define security posture management?
So we've got some questions, and sadly, it was 7 minutes ago. So, Jonathan, I don't 100% remember what part is available in beta. If you don't mind reminding me for Q&A, I just missed you, homie. I will share that some of the stuff that we're looking at in here, we are looking to start bringing anybody who's using like the EDR side and eventually on the ITDR side. We're going to start giving some of this, just give access to some of the product for free. We know one day we'll have to bill to be able to like make up for cost of goods sold and human service delivery, but we've always found that the right answer is get people in using and abusing and telling us what the product, is working and what sucks, as long as it's not causing like productivity issues. So just a heads up, we will be opening some of this stuff up either in early alpha. And I would just encourage if any of you have that appetite, you can chime in and chat. That'll help Chris and I go through these logs. But if you have like a tight relationship with your account manager, or even if you just reach out to support, we're going to look for some of these. So, Jonathan, if you got clarification, throw another question about what you were looking for in beta. But just giving you a heads up, like this isn't just theoretical. Next one, Chris, this was when we were showing some of the SIM stuff. And I think it's fair because, before we get into the meat and potatoes, you got a good question that just said any new developments with the Sentinel-1 SIM integration. You're literally writing it. Do you want to share anything real quick before I get going?
Yeah, yeah. So, kind of wrapped up at least like the first part of it yesterday. So the way it will work is you just provision a new service user within Sentinel-1, create basically give them the permissions to read everything and to be able to set up syslog and forwarding and to be able to set up like some of the notifications. Then you provide that API key to Huntress, and we set it all up so that all of the alerts and activity get sent to us. We'll put them in the SIM, our SOC will see them, all that kind of stuff. So, if you are interested in, connecting that up, let us know, and we'll get you in there.
Nice, nice. So, all right, we'll keep things moving, Chris. And I appreciate you taking that kind of curveball I threw you. I'll do a better job, team, looking at the questions. So we knew when we opened this up, and I've already seen some that came up. For those of you who've asked, are we moving into zero trust? Yes, we kind of thought this would come up. We know that zero trust is important, right? There was a White House memorandum in 2022 on it. And I'm super curious, how many of you folks are using some form of, whether it's allow listing, sometimes we call it application control. I'd love to know. So I just kicked off and appreciate Lenos behind the scene who's helping us run this, product lab is actually the one that did it. And I'm so curious, like, are any of you guys actually using it? And if so, are you using it like nowhere? Are you using it everywhere? Is there a good story? If you do choose, like, well, let me explain, light us up in chat, because what we're asking about is we're trying to get prioritization. We're really trying to understand about like which part of endpoint security posture management to start with. So if I had Jeopardy music, I'd throw it at you. I don't, but all right. I'm seeing some folks, by the way, just throw it up in chat. So I actually really appreciate some folks saying in there. Yeah, we see, by the way, I think at least amongst the service provider side, whether MSSP, VAR, telco, of course, MSP, we do see quite a bit of threat locker, and that's dope hearing a lot of people's feedback. Lenos, I know you kicked off that survey. You got enough votes in? You want to share some of the results of what we're getting in here? Okay. So, and you know what's wild is our data actually shows the adoption on like Huntress, clients is even less. We can see anything installed on these endpoints, including whether it's Threat Locker or the, other solutions out there. And we don't see enough adoption. And what I'm saying on it, it's not perfect. I mean, it's definitely not perfect, but it helps. It helps shift things left. So I appreciate everybody lighting us up too. Chris, you see any good chat comments you want to either like explore? Because there's a lot of people answering well, let me explain.
Well, it seems like a decent number of people are, in addition to kind of allow listing, also talking about products like Auto Elevate and others that allow you to have temporary admin permissions. So,
Yeah, I like that. And so I'll tell you, team, like, NSA has said go forth and, prosper, but they've had some pretty big caveats. If any of you have never seen this in like NSA's guidance, I won't read it all to you, but my favorite is like, yo, a lot of people still are unwilling to spend the resources. So keep in mind that's a huge potential challenge. They also warn, like, if you're not going to get complete buy-in, users, or if users are able to circumvent. And by the way, I don't think auto elevate is a form of circumvention, depending on the way it's implemented. And I just want to shine the kind of their last sentence. It just says, like, even basic or intermediate capabilities are kind of, when they're integrated, you got to keep that sucker up and alive. Is anybody struggling at all, with keeping it alive? I mean, I've heard quite well that once you get past like most of these solutions, Chris, what's the large one we see in Australia of the application? Is
Essentially.
so Essential
Are you
8
talking
is
about?
the requirement. What's the vendor that does a lot of? They're like the threat locker of Australia. Thank you, Airlock Digital. I appreciate
Oh,
the
there you
chat.
yeah.
Ramon, you nailed it first, and Jordan, you saved me. Yeah, Airlock. We see quite a bit of those, and generally we hear that like once you get a lot of the baselining done, yeah, there's some knobs and there's some stuff. And don't get me wrong, I've seen some pretty nasty regressions on accident, but we've been a little bit worried about this. Like, to be able to keep this up, like if you hinder somebody's productivity, they get spicy quick. I
Hmm.
think I saw the other day, maybe an S1 Reddit thread that some folks were really angry. And I'll tell you, on our end, no truer words have been said about zero trust not being perfect. We see these things, and it's again, belt and suspenders. You don't know which one's going to break. And the reason I say this is we've shared this before, but probably the best for like the sake of keeping an audience entertained. Like, this was a co-managed, partner of ours that had allow listing software on there. They brought us, came on board, and look at this threat actor, right? Anybody take a look what they're doing? Some basic enumeration, looking for these CAD drawings. I'll tell you, the blanked out word here is not a customer name. It's a very important word. I won't explore, I'll share it here in a second. I don't want to give the big reveal. And this threat actor here that's in an environment, notice everything using built-in admin tools, using Xcopy, even the exfil, based on what we could tell, it looked like it was going to try to use a OneDrive situation. Thankfully, we didn't get to that level, but the copying, moving everything over into this drawings folder, obviously you can imagine it gets zipped up and gets exfiltrated out. Anybody want to guess what type of e-drawings these were? Right, looking. And Chris, appreciate your question. Well, I'm going to answer that question about CIS benchmarks in just a second.
E-girl.
Planes, networks, e-girls. They were e-girl. Yeah, no, sadly, these were a missile system that all of you would recognize the name. Why that was on an unclassified CMMC client's like drive, I guess there's plenty of sensitive but unclassified documents there. So fighter jets, Eric, you probably would have won next to Dan as well with planes. That was rough to be able to see ballistic missile systems. So it was not a great situation here. So again, nobody's talking trash about zero trust. It's just that they're needed. And so what Chris and I want to remind you is, like, no matter what product you build, it's good to be able to explain why you're protecting. If any of you have like hung with us long enough, you know that the first thing we built at Huntress was we saw people were just walking through the bank straight to the vault and stealing stuff. So the first thing that Huntress built was this like pressure sensitive floor, right? To find the persistent footholds. And we realized, like, okay, that's dope. We're now finding stuff all day left and right, but why don't we invest a little bit more? So kind of one of the second things we built at Huntress was this managed antivirus, right? Managing Defender and just trying to improve getting people off some of the mundane. And thankfully, this happened at the exact same time Microsoft really started caring about antivirus security essentials. But what I'm going with it, right, is detection comes in all different shapes and sizes. So we kind of added Paul Blart Mall Cop. So when everything goes really bad, it's nice to at least have somebody say like, yo, ransomware happened. Because the difference between restoring, from backups at 9 p.m. on a Friday night is a lot better than, for instance, oh gosh, I found out there was an outage at 7 a.m. on a Monday. So just sharing back and forth, that's how it came. And we eventually brought out the big gun. the all-seeing eye at Huntress. And this is probably the biggest part of our EDR that looks at, do you remember, Chris, how many processes per day is this sucker looking at?
Oh, it's too many. It was like 14 billion or something at one point, but I'm sure it's way more than that now.
I don't know either. But long story short, this is how we looked at EDR. And so we need a little bit of your feedback on this is kind of what we're thinking. Because look, inevitably somebody's going to come in through the dang vents and steal stuff anyways. This is what it happens, but it's about layering, right? And so I want to talk a little bit and get some feedback from you all about this, using this analogy, the bank of ESPM. We're not certain that you start with the pressure sensitive plates when we build an endpoint security posture management. And I really could use some of your feedback. So, for instance, the lowest of low hanging fruit that we're seeing, and not just in the Microsoft world, but even some of the Mac, and obviously as we're exploring other operating systems as well, there is a lot of really good things that you can just either turn on and get more aggressive about attacks. And we think attack surface reduction, it's kind of a free capability that's built into a lot of these operating systems. Sometimes they can be aggressive though. Like if anybody's actually configured like some of the Windows built-in capabilities here, these are things like, oh, if you have a sub-process spawn, I think some, ring fencing is kind of the word I think that so many people use threat locker. They use that
Yep.
concept of like, oh, a legit application is doing something that's maybe illegitimate. Maybe it's reaching out to something it shouldn't. Maybe it's spawning a child process. PS exec. There's probably sometimes PS exec spawning something is okay, but there's also times that PS exec isn't. And so the beauty of these is when it works really well. And the downfall of when you harden too hard, you find out sometimes like, oh, I added an Excel spreadsheet plugin, and now Expel isn't running a macro that's now spawning some info stealer or, whatever, insert your rat du jour. We think that this could be the quick and easy, especially think of everybody in alpha. It gives us a chance to like ease into it. And while we're shipping this very, very fast, we think that gives us the option to really go after, and we're almost certain. I mean, Chris, you want to talk about this a little because you're really looking. You're asking, is this your next major challenge when you pass SIM off to the, you're kind of already doing that handover right now, but when it's fully turned over to the product team to not only innovate and keep it alive, you want to talk about app control because this is something on your mind.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think it's really, really quite interesting, especially given that it's like built into Windows and all of that. The challenge with it, talking to everybody, and we've got some friends who've actually been playing with it for many years, like since it came out, even before it was application control, back when it was App Locker. And the challenge with it has always been the management piece. How do you manage this at scale across your enterprise, all the exceptions and all of that. The good thing is we have extensive experience in doing this, right? When we monitor Defender antivirus, when we monitor and manage, almost 4 million endpoints, right? Like we've built scalable systems that are allow us to monitor these things from broad to very granular and so like I think application control fits really well into that. So I'm pretty excited for what I think that we can do and how much I believe we'll be able to take away from that management burden.
It's dope, Chris, is we've got folks jumping in and giving some of their thoughts. Like some of the conversation Eric said, he said, man, if you remember where we started for SPM, it was identify, right? It was harden and it was educate. And some folks are saying, yo, isn't inventory, isn't like some of that identification actually more important? Like so many people don't know why things are installed. And what I love about this is there's probably a dozen different ways. Matt also said, I want best practices template, some kind of like what's with managed antivirus to secure kind of the basics. He actually mentioned, M365, but Ramon earlier was preaching and saying, oh gosh, please give me just some secure configs, whether it's CIS, NIST, like there are so many of these low hanging fruit. And that's our long way of saying we feel you. So let me go back to my lovely, slide example. We think the configuration management piece is key. If you think of like a stool that has to have multiple legs on the table or they fall over, we think the configuration management, and what's beautiful, you don't have to have these things perfectly done. If anybody remembers how we do, like, it's a silly thing, but like billing, every time we come out with a product, we more or less give it away for free in alpha and beta for a really long time. And then we move into like, hey, we're going to pay for it. We're going to charge for it. And what we do, we call that early adopter pricing because like we never ship the perfect version when it's done. Like if you wait till it's perfect, like you end up waiting 2 years to find out it actually sucks. We like to build iteratively, just like threat actors progress iteratively through your network. And we've even considered like, could we get some of this attack service reduction in maybe some of the most obvious configuration management places? And the reason we're talking about that of like, not every stool leg will be as strong as the other one is maybe we actually figure out like, is there an MVP of some of these? And then we'll just use your help to harden them. Other things that we're kind of expecting is we've seen, dog fights happen. Sometimes RMMs fight between each other because some RMMs harden better than others. Some RMMs don't really do configuration hardening at all. And then you throw the wild card of Intune, right? More and more people, we're seeing mass adoption of people moving from business standard into business premium. And when that wave happened, probably started to happen really aggressively in the last year, people are realizing they get all kinds of different tools with their business premium licensing they're not using. And so we're even aware of like helping set your local or domain GPOs. And then all of a sudden Intune can come in here and be like, boom, I'm going to overwrite everything. So we think that there's some real value here of learning these things. And I hope to just share with everybody that we're not forgetting about Paul Blart, right? Asset discovery, elevated privileges. So those of you who said, auto elevate, the biggest thing we're looking at, Huntress, is we don't want to give you 9 different things you have to choose to tune, configure, and then buy independently. So I'll tell you, it is almost rock solid since Chris and I, as well as our product leader, Prakash, it really comes down to the 3 of us of how we package. And internally, we do not believe in giving you 9 different things to buy. We really try to focus on what does it cost us so we could deliver that savings over to you. And, don't get me wrong, cost of value is an important thing, but we're trying to build a product that can help protect the masses, right? And some of that becomes with like, hey, look, configuration management, maybe it comes out with the first 50% version. And then we work to get it to like perfect coverage from, the difference between maybe CIS, tiers 1 and 2 versus, 3, which is more of the enterprise lock everything down. So
Yep.
now that I got this bank down, I'm curious if you look at roughly these 4 to 5 different things, can anybody give me maybe their 1 and 2? And I'm not going to open a formal poll. I'm just looking at chat. We'll come back, by the way, and read some of these things. I'm really wild about what people, now that you've seen, this is, by the way, if we're missing anything against ESPM, this is like your time to really yell at us.
Yeah, it seems like a bunch of people are saying, just having even some sort of baseline secure configuration or template or anything, not even just on the endpoint, but also for like Microsoft 365. And that's something I've heard in conversations over and over and over with our partners.
Chris, can you remind me that there was a company that won an award last year at one of ConnectWise's event? Maybe it was IT Nation Connect. We also talked to them. They started on kind of the configuration hardening. Sention. Thanks for just smiling
Sentient.
at me. Your lovely face reminded me. Sention does like configuration and hardening. They never got a ton of traction. And so what I'm excited is I'm seeing a lot of people jump on the configs. And I wondered why that company didn't get better like growth. And they are growing, but like it's really hard. I think it's because there's just so many other places to put budget. And I don't know enough about their implementation to know if it could crush it, it could suck.
I think
Interesting.
it's
So
also one of those, it's like by itself, it's somewhat hard to show value, right? Because proving a negative is not really possible. You can't really
mm,
say, hey, because we set these configs up, you didn't get hacked, right? Like, well, maybe nobody was hacking us, hard to say, right? It's not easy to prove it versus, from the other side, like the EDR side, the detection and response side, it's like, hey, we found this thing that got through. Pretty clear value, right? So I think starting at that, the secured configuration end and working more towards the attack is harder, right? And it's very much why we started with, hey, we know security is bad and people are getting wrecked. Let's start with detection and response. Let's stop the bleeding. And now let's start to move left and start to say, what are the things that we can actually prevent instead of just detecting after bad stuff has happened?
I love how many people like I'm actually a little surprised that secure configuration management is such a priority. I mean, it's a priority to me. I still go back and ask why some of these aren't hardened out of the box, but I remember how long it took just to get Microsoft to move some of these really obvious settings that, backwards compatibility is huge for them. So I think, Chris, we've done a good job. I'm looking at time and I know how these episodes go. I want to maybe remind folks, like, folks are still going to get in, right? But our whole goal with this is like, look, layered security. How can we not make it so when somebody just gets past the basics, and start teeing up these layers together? So that's the overall of what we're looking at. It will be a separate product. And the reason for it is we find a lot of people who are happy with maybe their other EDR. Like we love our EDR, but we're a true security company that wants to help you any way we can. If you use it all, fucking great. If you use part of it, that's cool too. And so I just wanted to share with folks that this is the way we are looking at it. And we're trying to like not race to either the top of prices or bottom of prices. And that's such a sensitive thing because, gosh, these things nickel and dime, whether it's your IT budget or heaven forbid, you're trying to make margin on this as a partner. Just each one of these erodes things. So, Chris, I want to share with everybody, we are hearing you loud and clear. And the fact that we didn't prompt of which flavor you guys want to see, there's CIS, there's NIST, there's new guidance. Essential 8 is obviously much broader than some of all these, but I want to share in the configuration management, we hear you loud and clear. We know what you want, and we know that that's a thing. And we've done a lot of configuration management, even through Defender. We do a lot of those settings. So the fact that someone called out in chat, like, whoa, could you give me the Huntress default standard and allow me only to override those? We are thinking about that way. We're going to use that same design pattern. It just shortens our R&D time. And anywhere that it doesn't work, well, let's find out where we cause a little bit of friction and let's smooth it out. So thank you for that feedback. Chris, you talked about this. You want to share a little bit more and maybe just real quickly glance? These are some of the
Yeah.
ones that we've looked at.
Yeah, I mean, it seemed like a number of people in chat were familiar with attack surface reduction or what Microsoft also calls ASR. But for anybody who's not, basically, this is stuff that Microsoft has built into the operating system over the last, I don't know, decade, where they have added in controls to be able to allow you to mitigate common attacks that they see. So there's stuff in there for like PS exec, which is a common administrator tool that allows you to execute something else on a remote machine. Attackers often use it to do lateral movement. There's stuff in there around like Office and not allowing Office, whether it's like a Word doc or an Excel spreadsheet or whatever, to create another process, right? That was the thing that we saw for so many years and still see with macros. Executable attachments just being sent over email, things that look like dot JPG dot exe, right? And like that people download and then run.
I can't
So there's a
believe
lot of that stuff that's in there. The challenge with this, as with many of these things, are that um, turning it just all on at once, blanket, is probably going to cause you some problems,
I'm
right?
going to say
And
productivity will be hindered.
yeah, and so you end up in this kind of tedious thing that you have to keep up with, which is like you set it to auditing, you identify what it would block, you decide if that's something you want to block or not. If you don't want to block it, then you have to add an exception, you deploy that again, you monitor, and it's this constant kind of feedback loop, and it takes a while to get to the point where you feel comfortable that you could say, if we turn this on instead of auditing to enforcing, then we're mostly only going to block the things that we care about. And it's a process that takes a while, and it's something you have to keep up on. And when you have 100 other things going on, and you're getting pulled in all kinds of different directions, it's just very hard to ever get to 100%. A lot of people end up setting up an ASR policy in audit mode, never really get back to it, and it just kind of sits there, and it logs stuff, but it doesn't prevent anything. And so, super cool tool, but it's going to require some, management and some auditing and all that kind of stuff to get you from, auditing to enforcing.
So, Chris, I want to pause you because we had a great question that came, I think, from Matt in here, just in the actual live chat. He called a spade a spade. He said, "Yo, look," and I'm scrolling to figure out where this was, but he essentially said like SIP, Emibot, Enforcer, Sentient. There's a dozen of these darn things. What main problem are we trying to solve? Are we trying to be number 26 here? Are we trying to, essentially just democratize access to this? Do we think we can do better? I know the first one off my mind was everything Huntress provides is fully managed. I know the number one thing I want to provide is that human SOC expertise, looking at eyes on these things. I also think there is some competitive edge that we're trying to say, like, look, I think some people charge a lot of money for some of these features and they don't really cost that much. So I'm not racing again to the bottom,
Yeah.
but if you're going to charge for it, charge for the expensive ass human labor. Don't
Yeah.
fucking charge. Like, can I give you the product and humans at the same price?
And that's the key thing is that human piece and the automation piece, right? It's easy to just give you a tool that's like, hey, go in, click these buttons, turn things on. It sounds great, but you got to do it. And then you got to do it across all your tenants. And then you got to maintain it and you got to keep up with it. And having a tool is hard. I mean, that was the very beginning of Huntress. We looked at why were more SMBs not using EDR? And what we found was by and large, if you went and you bought things like CrowdStrike and SentinelOne and many of these others, it was a tool. You could turn it on, it would generate alerts, but you had to have somebody who was there looking at those alerts, determining if they were true positives or false positives, running remediations. It was all on you. Many of them now have more, managed things with Overwatch for CrowdStrike or Vigilance for SentinelOne. But when we started, they were just tools. And
Mm.
so as I look at many of these other products like SIP and Sention and your RMM, they're just tools, right? They expose that interface for you to do it, but there's no human management and there's no real help to get you from where you're starting to where you need to be.
Yeah, they're part of the solution, right? I mean, obviously we sponsor SIP, huge fans of Kelvin, want to see that work. It gives somebody the tools to do more work. It doesn't necessarily take the work off your plate. I think that's kind of what we're going to on this. And by the way,
Yep.
for us, it's always kind of been, we always knew we were going to go here. I mean, we've had lots of webinars over the last 10 years, and I'm a little ashamed it's taken us 10 years to get to, it kind of is less sexy. I just calling it out. I think there will be some byproducts. Like, yeah, we'll probably try to just offer better value. That's kind of our internal MO, is to be the never the cheapest, but be the lowest total cost of ownership, meaning you can't buy this and acquire the people and self-manage. And if you are, do free your talent up. We're just trying to free these mundane, monotonous things up for your best talent to go do the stuff, whether it's project-based work, whether it's sexy like vuln assessments or pen testing, or, you know, we understand retention is a bitch and we're trying to help on some of these things. There's no reason somebody in 2025. I do want to share, like sometimes businesses go out, like I was not aware, but I had somebody recently that said, Kyle, like, are you trying to dominate the market? And like, I don't think domination means, like I said earlier, blackout bingo isn't success, but like somebody said, hey, you know, we released our sim and we needed the sim to address technology that didn't clearly fit into our other products. And there's more and more regulation requiring sim. And the byproduct, it's caused some pretty good companies that I like to struggle, right? And so I do think like eggs will get broken, but that's not the goal, is to crush anybody or anything like that. It just give kind of the lowest total cost of ownership option. I hope it doesn't put good people out of business, but I think even some of these cases, these could be like early stage M&A we do, right? We just like, even though we build most of this stuff, sometimes you buy a team that's maybe got good tech, but needs like all the other support, like the people management, the billing support, stuff like that. So that's me saying like, I don't think we're going to just try to crush businesses, but it could happen, I guess.
Yeah. Right.
Chris, 10 minutes. People have asked a lot in regards to, and actually one comment that was saving was someone said, hey, doesn't auto elevation kind of like, or elevation of privileges, kind of feel like a good middle ground between hardening. Like if it gets past, at least you're minimizing, like there's nothing worse than users that have elevated privileges, but being a little bit
Yeah.
more safe. I've got you teed up here. Like, what's your thought as a middle ground? Because it's on your mind. I know that we have this. I know the team is looking into
Mhm.
this, and we know this isn't built into kind of any operating system, not Mac, not Nix,
Yeah.
not Windows.
Yeah. Yeah, this is one of those that's interesting. A lot of the stuff that we've, looked at is built into Windows. Elevated privileges and really asset discovery is not, which is kind of interesting. There is and I haven't played around with it yet, but there is an elevated privilege functionality now within Intune, relatively new, but it'll allow you to get kind of like centralized alerts and things like that. So something we're going to look into, but even like asset discovery, like I don't really see much there. So we're going to continue to look into these and figure out where they fit. One of the folks asked in chat earlier, like, "Hey, are we trying to align to CIS benchmarks and controls and stuff?" And in some way, we are actually. In many cases, um, I've been favoring the ACSC's Essential 8, just because it is much more prescriptive and detailed, even than like CIS benchmarks. You look at a lot of these security frameworks, and they'll tell you things like, "Oh, you need to log stuff that you'll need to be able to look at later." But they never tell you specifically what it is. And so it's kind of up to you and whoever you get to do the audit to decide, like, is this good enough? Versus like the Essential 8 is pretty clear. It'll say, hey, to get to maturity level 3, you need to enable and be using Microsoft's default block list, right? Like they're very specific about what it is. So I think as I've looked at it, asset discovery is either not on some of these, like it's not really within Essential 8, it's lower in the priority for the CIS benchmarks. But I think elevated privileges is definitely one that
Mhm.
needs to have a solution for it.
Yep. Man, chat is going wild, Chris. I'm going to skip some of these stuff because we've also got questions too. And yes,
Yep.
team, we are definitely looking at application control. Somebody, and I missed you earlier, I took it down to like a handwritten note here, real quick, but someone earlier called out, what about just focusing on the signing certificates and not going after each file hash? That's a lot of, I think it's whack-a-mole is the word that was used. Preach. Whoever said that, we actually think in some cases, zero trust is, I mean, it's a marketing word at the end of the day. What it really is based on is a great principle of like, by default, we're going to give scrutiny and we're going to consider things before we trust it. And the parts that I want to get at for everybody is like, we don't plan to like move away from that, but how strict and getting down, and don't get me wrong, there is definitely sexy tradecraft that I'm going to load my exploit and locally exploit the Java app that's already digitally signed, and I'm going to run my payload. Yes, of course, of course, of course. But to what level? And to be very frank, part of like layered security is knowing when do you let some things pass. So we're even looking at our allow listing and saying, just kind of like how SIM was, everybody had the mantra of let me store everything in SIM. We actually think some of the approaches to zero trust, allow listing, application, allow listing and app control, it's too fucking strict. Look and inspect every single DLL that gets loaded into the process, etc. That's a lot of compute. It's a lot of data that gets exfilled to the cloud or uploaded. Exfilled is a bad word, I guess. Stored in the cloud, a lot that has to get stored and retained in the database, then compute, then humans analyze. There is such thing as too much. And so I want to share with everybody, we really think there might be a need to approach application control slightly different, meaning, okay, if it gets past some of these things, I think that will help get around a lot of the productivity issues. And I cannot tell you from our experience, one situation of productivity offsets 100 cases of great prevention, protection, etc. So we're really trying to explore this, and we'll need a lot of your help because, to be very frank, you can't call it zero trust and then just like trust, 90% trust, 10% trust. Like that doesn't work. So that's our way of saying we're going to play with this, right? And we're definitely going to work through some of this stuff. Chris, do you have anything else? I know like configurable through Intune group policy, some of this we're talking about, this is the Windows case of WDAC. Do you want anything else you want to add on that sucker?
No, nope. I think we covered a lot of it already.
So I'm going to speed run because we had questions asked earlier. And again, I haven't been able to get to them because so much. Now we're asking ourselves for ISPM, right? Identity Security Posture Management Research. The first question we started out with was this T question. Usually SSPM is kind of like going broad across the top, right? All the SaaS apps that your identities can log into. Is that it? The next question is, should it be ISPM, just like hardening the hell out of whatever app or apps you use? Is it something in between? And so I wanted to share with you a little bit of our internal setup. Like, Chris, you want to talk about like, this is Huntress data. You literally
Yeah.
just pulled this minutes before. You want to talk about what the IT team sent you up and kind of paint our problem so we can kind of end here in the next couple minutes?
Yeah, so we use a tool called Tori, Torii. And what it's supposed to do is help us kind of manage applications. So it does a couple of things. It will try to identify what applications are being used. So there's a browser plugin. I think it can also get some stuff from other cases to get information about like who's logging in and to where. And then it also helps you track which of your applications are, quote unquote, approved by your organization. And so you can see here we have 349, is that what it says? 349
Yep.
applications that are allowed that we have said, yes, you may use these. And if you go to the next slide, you can actually see just how many are what they call discovered, means they've seen people logging into these or using them or whatever, but we actually haven't explicitly said as an organization, yes, you're allowed to use this. And there's 456 of these. Don't get me wrong, they're not all SaaS apps. Like you can see on here is like Firefox and Sublime Text, but there are many SaaS apps like Draw.io and all that kind of stuff. And there's like all kinds of stuff as I scrolled through different applications that it was like, do we want to allow people to use that? Different AI stuff, different whatever. Um, and so, like, we know firsthand just what a challenge this truly is to say there's this small handful list of apps that you can use and you can use nothing else. It really can start to hinder your ability to do work.
All right, Chris. So one of my big spicy questions, right? We know that there is endless third-party apps. I love this notification. Hey, Chris, you just had somebody, leave your team. They're out somewhere else. You now have to offboard them in these 5 different apps. And that's the ones that don't support some of the automation. That's just the manual side that you have to do this.
100%. This
It
this is the
sucks.
biggest challenge. This is the biggest one by far. Like we have a number of things that where it is automated. And so when somebody onboards or they request access to an app, I get a thing in Slack and I can just hit approve and they automatically get added. And there are some of those. And then when they offboard, if they leave, they automatically get removed. But there are many more applications that are like this, where you just get a to-do list of, hey, go log into each one of these 5 applications, go figure out how to get to the user permissions management, find this user and remove them. And I don't know, for me, like, I guess it's better than nothing, but man, like that's not awesome when I gotta go and log into a bunch of different places. And it's not like a problem with Tori or necessarily any of these others. I talked to the folks at App Omni and they had the same thing and they said like, look, there are a bunch of things that like a bunch of SaaS apps that people use and they don't expose the API to do that user management and user permissioning. You have to go into the UI and you have to do it from there. And so this is part of the reason why we are excited about like ISPM, but also like concerned that we wouldn't be able to really take the work away. It just doesn't feel great to give somebody a list and say, "Hey, here's 20 SaaS apps that you need to go remove this person from." Like that's not awesome.
So, Chris, with that note, we have one poll to top the hour. And the thing that I want to ask is, do you actually care when an unwanted SaaS app is used? Do you really? You've got, I mean, for hunters, you see, we've got, two different apps per every employee and teammate we have here. Is this something we can keep up with? Is it 100%? I need it. Is it the nuance here, like it's 50 shades of spicy? I'm curious. I got to know like how you're actually feeling here. And I'll tell you, like this is a hard part. We've really tried to get critical on our thinking here, and we're like, what if we just tell everybody, congrats, here's another app, here's another app. It seems like I'm creating you endless work. But don't get me wrong, it's all fun and games till you find out that app that they're using is like, oh, it's my one salesperson, and that salesperson is uploading our entire CRM to the database, and now it wasn't secured by two-factor, and now our competitors are in. I mean, we literally saw this with like some of the espionage over the years attacking kind of Western country or Western businesses. Like this happened for real. And some of the cases, it wasn't the internal critical infrastructure, it was unused app or unwanted apps. Let AI take care of it. Yeah. I mean, gosh. It's rough. I'm loving some of the questions in here, Chris. All right. With us running short on just the formal episode, Lenos, will you show us that poll? I see you've got it here. I failed to read it. 100%, only 42% of people said that they 100% wanted to. But the other 42%, and it did end up this way, said, look, the nuance here matters.
Yeah.
That is it. I feel like this poll. Only 16% said bigger fish to fry. And I won't lie, I might have been part of that 16%. I couldn't vote in this, but when I was going with Chris, I actually asked, can we just say fuck it? Can we let this like think about forest fires? Usually you have to clear brush away, and sometimes you got to let other parts of the fires just burn where the winds aren't as strong. I know that's spicy, but again, this is real rough. With that said, I think, Lenos, now is a time to let Chris and I maybe wrap the episode. If you don't mind, let us give something away real quick and let's stop the recording. But Chris and I are going to hang for questions because there is so much chat today, and we can even give you guys a peek into some of the innovation we didn't have to cover for the actual episode itself. You good with that, Chris?
Yep. Yep.
Okay.